tariffs going into effect.
This is the tariff war.
I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary. A tariff or tariff.
That this president is right when it comes to tariffs.
In April of 2025, President Donald J. Trump hit foreign imports with massive new tariffs up to 49%. While everyone's talking about China, 5 smaller countries are facing economic collapse. These nations send up to 38% of everything they make to America, and the country number 3 on our list here will completely shock you. Let's count down the economies about to be destroyed. Sri Lanka is number 5 on our list, facing a 44% tariff on the $3 billion worth of goods it sells to America each year. That's 25% of everything Sri Lanka sells to other countries and 3.6% of its entire $82.9 billion economy. Most of what Sri Lanka sells to America is clothing, 63.7%, rubber products, 8.2%, and tea at 6.4%. Sri Lanka was already having money problems with debt equal to 128% of its yearly economic output. The country has $4.2 billion in savings to buy things from other countries, which would last about 2.8 months. The International Monetary Fund gave Sri Lanka $2.9 billion in 2023 to help, but only if they sold 5.8% more stuff each year, which won't happen now with these tariffs. The clothing industry gives jobs to 15.4% of Sri Lanka's workers, about 340,000 people. Women make up 78.3% of these workers. The average worker earns $187 per month and typically supports 3.2 family members. Experts think between 112,000 and 176,000 people will lose their jobs within 6 months if sales to America drop by 35 to 55% as expected. Sri Lanka's economy was just starting to recover from a terrible crisis in 2022 that caused food shortages, power outages, and massive protests. The country actually ran out of fuel and cooking gas, forcing the president to flee the country. These new tariffs could push Sri Lanka back into similar conditions, with widespread unemployment in regions heavily dependent on garment factories. The $3 billion in exports to America represents about 43% of Sri Lanka's total foreign currency earnings. Without these dollars, the country will struggle to import essential goods like medicine, fuel, and food ingredients. Sri Lanka produces only 35% of the rice it needs and imports 100% of its wheat, sugar, and milk powder. A 44% tariff would make it nearly impossible to maintain these imports at current levels. Vietnam, at number 4, faces a 46% tariff on the $136.6 billion worth of goods it sells to America. That's 32% of all of Vietnam's exports and 29.8% of its $458 billion economy. Vietnam sells electronics, 39.7%, clothing, 16.3%, shoes, 14.2%, and furniture at 9.1% to America. Vietnam's economy grew about 6.2% each year from 2010 to 2024. Factories went from making 13% of Vietnam's economy in 2000 to 26.2% in 2024. During that same time, farming dropped from 24% to 12.1%. Foreign companies invested $22.4 billion in Vietnam in 2024, with 71.3% of that money going to build factories that make products to sell to other countries. Vietnam's central bank says the 46% tariff will shrink the country's economy by 6.1%. Factories that were running at 83.7% of what they can make will drop to 61.4% within 9 months. Vietnam's money has already lost 7.8% of its value compared to the US dollar since the tariff announcement. This makes it harder for Vietnam to pay back its $156.8 billion in debt to other countries, since 65.3% of that debt must be paid in dollars. What makes Vietnam's situation particularly difficult is that the country invested heavily in becoming Factory Asia. The government spent $86.3 billion on infrastructure between 2015 and 2024, building industrial parks, deep water ports, and power plants specifically designed to support export manufacturing. This infrastructure was built on the assumption that Vietnam would continue to be a manufacturing hub for decades. Almost every major electronics company has factories in Vietnam. Apple makes 20% of its AirPods there. Samsung produces 60% of its smartphones in Vietnamese factories, and Intel operates its largest chip assembly facility in the country. These companies chose Vietnam specifically to avoid Chinese tariffs during the first trade war, but now face similar tariffs in their backup location. The exodus of these companies would leave Vietnam with massive industrial capacity but few customers. The country has 394 industrial zones, covering over 120,000 hectares of land. These zones employ about 4.2 million workers, or 7.6% of Vietnam's total workforce. The tariffs threaten not just current jobs, but Vietnam's entire developmental strategy. Country number 3 is Madagascar, which faces a 47% tariff, even though it's one of the world's poorest countries. Madagascar sells $733.2 million worth of goods to America each year. That's 15.7% of everything it exports and 4.7% of its $15.6 billion economy. But these numbers hide something important about what Madagascar sells. Madagascar grows 80% of the world's natural vanilla, and America buys 31.7% of it. The vanilla business gives jobs to 80,000 small farmers who grow 2,100 tons of vanilla each year, worth between $1.2 and $1.9 billion, depending on prices. Madagascar sold $192 million worth of vanilla to America in 2024, with farmers getting paid between $125 and $180 per kilogram. Madagascar also grows 67% of the world's cloves. It exported 7,800 tons of cloves in 2024. The country's clothing industry has grown 37.4% since 2018 and now gives jobs to 320,000 people in 181 factories. These factories mostly sell to America because they don't have to pay tariffs under a special law called the African Growth and Opportunity Act. The 47% tariff will make Madagascar's products too expensive in America. Experts think between 63 and 79% of its clothing exports won't be able to compete at the new prices. The average person in Madagascar earns just $613 per year, with 77.4% of people living on less than $2.15 per day. The tariffs will likely push another 1.2 million people into extreme poverty. Madagascar doesn't have enough money to help its people through this crisis. The country only has enough foreign money saved to pay for 3.2 months of imports. Only 11.8% of the country's economy gets collected as taxes. Madagascar's money, called the Ariary, is hard to exchange for other currencies, making it difficult to trade with countries that don't use dollars or euros. What makes Madagascar truly shocking is how it dominates such specific markets. For vanilla, the growing conditions are extremely specific. The plants need consistent temperatures between 59 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit with high humidity and regular rainfall. The labor involved is also incredibly precise. Each flower must be hand-pollinated within 12 hours of opening, and the beans require 6 to 9 months of careful curing after harvest. When you buy vanilla ice cream or vanilla-flavored products in America, there's an 80% chance that flavor originated in Madagascar. American companies like McCormick, Coca-Cola, Nestle, and Ben & Jerry's all depend on Madagascaran vanilla. With a 47% price increase, many will switch to artificial vanilla flavoring, which would destroy the market for natural vanilla farmers. Vanilla theft has already been a problem in Madagascar when prices are high. In 2018, when vanilla hit $600 per kilogram, armed guards had to protect vanilla fields. With the market collapse that would follow these tariffs, many farmers would have no alternative income source. The average vanilla farmer cultivates just 1 to 2 acres and has no other marketable skills or crops that could replace this income. Laos has spent $12.7 billion building dams since 2010, increasing its power generation from 1,932 megawatts to 9,700 megawatts. Laos borrowed most of this money from other countries, creating debt equal to 126.9% of its yearly economic output. Laos now owes $14.5 billion to other countries, with 64.7% owed to China and 87.3% that must be paid back in US dollars or euros. The money Laos earns from selling to America provides dollars it needs to pay back these loans. Laos must pay $1.28 billion in dollar-based debt each year until 2030. Right now, Laos has $1.18 billion in foreign currency saved up, which would cover only 2.1 months of imports. Laos's money has lost 32.6% of its value against the dollar since 2020. The 48% tariff would reduce Laos's dollar earnings by about $381 million each year, making it impossible to pay back its loans. Experts say there's an 82.7% chance Laos will fail to pay its debts within 24 months if it can't find other ways to get dollars. Laos faces unique challenges as a landlocked country. With no access to seaports, all exports must travel through Thailand, Vietnam, or China, adding 18 to 23% to transportation costs. The country built a $5.9 billion high-speed railway connecting to China in hopes of becoming a regional trade hub, but this railway is severely underused, operating at just 17% of capacity. The main products Laos sells to America are electrical parts, clothing, and coffee. Without U.S. trade, Laos would lose 70% of its dollar income and face immediate pressure to sell assets or resources to raise funds. China already owns 33% of Laos's electrical grid through a debt for equity swap in 2020. Similar arrangements for other national assets would likely follow if Laos defaulted on more loans. Laos also faces pressure from reduced remittances. About 280,000 Laotians work in Thailand, sending home $310 million annually. As Thailand's economy also suffers from U.S. tariffs, 21% rate, many of these workers will lose their jobs, further reducing dollar flows into Laos. The country's central bank estimates dollar liquidity could fall below critical levels within 14 months of tariff implementation. Cambodia has the highest risk, with a 49% tariff affecting 38% of its exports. Cambodia sold $12.7 billion worth of goods to America in 2024, making up 15.3% of its $82.6 billion economy. Most of what Cambodia sells is clothing at 56.3%, shoes at 12.8%, and travel items like bags and suitcases at 9.7%. Cambodia has 977 clothing factories that employ 847,200 workers as of early 2025, with women making up 81% of these workers. These factories provide 24.6% of all regular jobs in the country. The average monthly wage in these factories went up from $92 in 2012 to $214 in 2025, helping support about 36 million Cambodians through shared family income. The 49% tariff will make Cambodian products too expensive for American stores. Factory owners report that 42.3% of orders for the second half of 2025 have already been canceled since the tariff announcement. It cost about 96 cents per hour to make products in Cambodia, compared to $2.13 in Thailand and $24.82 in the United States. But the 49% tariff wipes out this price advantage. Experts predict between 552,000 and 638,000 factory workers will lose their jobs within a year. This would shrink Cambodia's economy by 9.3 to 12.7%. Cambodia's money has already lost 6.3% of its value against the dollar since the tariff announcement. Cambodia's central bank has spent 11.8% of its dollar reserves trying to keep its currency stable. Cambodia's garment industry is concentrated in specific regions, particularly around Phnom Penh and Sihanoukville. In these areas, up to 68% of working-age adults are employed in export manufacturing. When factories close, entire communities lose their income simultaneously. This happened on a smaller scale during COVID-19, with 250 factories temporarily closed and 130,000 workers returned to rural villages. The average garment worker in Cambodia sends 38% of their income back to family in rural areas. This money pays for food, education, and health care for extended families. Economic studies show each factory job supports between 3 to 5 additional people. The sudden loss of this income would affect approximately 2.5 to 3.2 million people beyond the workers themselves. Cambodia has the youngest workforce among these 5 countries, with 51% of garment workers under the age of 30. Most migrated from rural areas specifically for factory work and have limited alternative employment options. The government has no unemployment insurance system and limited capacity for retraining programs, with just $78 million budgeted for all social safety net programs in 2025. These 5 nations, Cambodia, Laos, Madagascar, Vietnam, and Sri Lanka, all face tariff rates between 44 and 49%. Together, they sell $154.4 billion worth of goods to America each year, providing jobs to 4.3 million workers directly and 12 to 15 million more indirectly. Data shows countries sending more than 15% of their exports to America will see their economy shrink by 8.3% on average. About 17.6 to 22.4 billion in foreign investment will leave these countries within 18 months as factories move elsewhere. Most production won't return to America, but will go to countries with lower tariffs like Bangladesh, 7.8%, Indonesia, 22%, and Mexico exempt from tariffs. Which of these 5 countries surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for our next video.